And welcome to On Purpose Astrology. The last video in this Pluto series focused on the end days of Pluto in Capricorn, and now we put our focus on Pluto in Aquarius. Pluto went into Aquarius early this year, 2023, in March, and moved back into Capricorn again in June, where it stays into Capricorn until January next year before it goes back into Aquarius again. All the dates are in the last video, and I'll also put those dates below this video as well. But before we focus specifically on Pluto in Aquarius, let's look very briefly about some of the general themes of Pluto. So it's about power and wealth, or the lack of, the survival instinct. It's associated with elimination and purging, those things that we wish to purge, both personally, psychologically, and collectively. It's about what in society is taboo or shameful, and those things get pushed underground because, of course, Pluto is the god of the underworld. It's also about underground crimes, for example, organized crime. It's about the collective shadow, and we can see the collective shadow played out in our news cycle, the things that happen in the world and the politics, and also in the groups that we belong to, particularly with Pluto in Aquarius. Now, Pluto shows us the shadow side of whatever sign it's in. We saw in the Pluto in Capricorn video some of the things that happened and that are still happening under Pluto in Capricorn that really reflect the shadow side of Capricorn, scapegoating, for example. So the shadow of Aquarius. Well, Aquarius likes equality, fairness, freedom. Sometimes acts as if some are more equal than others. Under Pluto in Aquarius, collective ideology becomes more important than individual human life, and we see that very starkly the last time that Pluto was in Aquarius, during the reign of terror that occurred during the French Revolution, when the aristocrats, for example, were executed. At the time Pluto was in Aquarius, it was opposite Uranus, the sign of revolution and rebellion. So intellectualism, it's an air sign, Aquarius, so intellectualism and reason can become more important than empathy and compassion. Aquarius, for example, believes in democracy, but it can create hierarchy. There can be a detachment from emotions, and an over-attachment to ideas. And it's a fixed sign, Aquarius, so it wants change, positive change, it really does, but it can become inflexible when change is not achieved. Now we're going to talk about some ideas and opportunities for Pluto in Aquarius, and I'm going to share my screen so you can see visuals as I'm talking. So Pluto in Aquarius, some ideas and opportunities. Well, we have the opportunity to transform democracy, or maybe to destroy democracy, the shadow of democracy. There's the demands for civil rights and equality and freedom of speech that comes with Pluto in Aquarius. There are strikes going on all over the UK for fair pay for public sector workers. People power protest, potentially societal breakdown or civil unrest during Pluto in Aquarius, and governments doubling down on protest and free speech, and the rise of the so-called cancel culture. We might also see the shadow side of protest movements that do call for equality and freedom. Environmental catastrophe and mass displacement. Here we can see on the screen now a shot of today's news. US swelters as Southwest braces for record-breaking heatwave of up to 120 degrees Fahrenheit. Science fiction books. It's not climate change, it's everything change. Sci-fi authors take on the global crisis, for example. We have transformational innovation and invention. unleashing great power, perhaps with unintended consequences for the good or for the bad. There's a company in the UK called Space Forge. The next industrial revolution isn't on Earth. Isn't that interesting? We are going through, at the moment, undoubtedly a technological revolution. We had the Industrial Revolution, which is all about factories, etc., and steam power, etc., and so on. Now we're having the technological revolution. Space Forge, this company, is advocating for manufacturing in space. So the factories on the ground are now going to be in space if they achieve their aims. Fascinating. Space itself, space exploration has come on a long way and it's back on the agenda and there's more rockets going up. What's really interesting, remember Pluto is about great wealth. And what is really, really interesting is that instead of governments funding space exploration, it's now being funded more and more by billionaires. SpaceX here, Elon Musk's SpaceX company. You can see a picture there from the news. Really interesting. The reinvention of what it means to be human, artificial intelligence, transhumanism, longer lifespans, the idea of gender fluidity and gender changes, which is a really hot topic in the news at the moment. I wonder, because it's an air sign, isn't it, Aquarius? I wonder whether we will have insight into what is consciousness. Will the mystery be solved? Do we really understand who we are and where we come from? And what our consciousness is? There's a growing knowledge industry, the service industry, the manufacturing industries, etc., but a growing knowledge industry. So if you have something to teach and to share, you can make money from it. For example, on YouTube with videos. Will there be a radical change in the prevailing economic system? I wonder. Look back on the video at the end about the end days of Pluto and Capricorn, the video that came before this, and you'll see that the signs are potentially there. The very Pluto and Aquarian thing would be a universal basic income, giving everyone money each month so that their necessities are satisfied. That is a topic that is coming up more and more for debate and question. Challenges for monarchies in the UK. Here we have a new king, but there's more republicanism brewing under. And perhaps Pluto and Aquarius will question more and more the relevance of hereditary power and titles. Forced social reforms that benefit the collective but cause individual suffering, another shadow potentially of Pluto in Aquarius. The restructuring of the structures exposed as corrupt under Pluto and Capricorn. And advocating for equality, again a more positive thing, advocating for equality for those who were scapegoated in Pluto in Capricorn. Again, in the previous video, talk about sectors of society that were scapegoated and still being scapegoated under Pluto and Capricorn. And of course, radical changes we can't yet predict. So what's really interesting, I mentioned that there's a connection. In the last video, I mentioned that I was going to talk about a connection between Pluto in Aquarius and the current Jupiter-Saturn cycle. Here's a chart here. It doesn't matter if you can't read a chart, just the red circle there shows on the outside wheel Pluto at 0 of Aquarius. And it obviously was always going to ingress Aquarius, and it will ingress Aquarius, i.e. move into Aquarius at 0 degrees of Aquarius. And I've shown the chart here for Pluto going into Aquarius 23rd of March 2023. However, in 2020, which is the middle wheel, you can see there in the circle, you've got Jupiter and Saturn moved into Aquarius, which is their current cycle. It's a 20-year cycle. Jupiter and Saturn It's a 20-year cycle. And they've moved into the current 20-year cycle. They ingressed into 0 Aquarius. So when Pluto goes into Aquarius, well, it's already gone into Aquarius, it's going back and forth. Pluto's move into Aquarius triggers and intensifies the Jupiter and Saturn cycle. So what does the Jupiter-Saturn cycle mean? Well, basically, it symbolizes, it's a 20-year cycle, and it symbolizes how ideas and possibilities become reality over time. It demands that possibilities are realized responsibly and are fit for purpose. So it's all about the idea, Jupiter, and how that manifests in reality. Saturn, it's about change, it's about development, it's about progress. Now, what's interesting about this current Jupiter-Saturn cycle is it's not only the start of the current 20-year cycle of Jupiter and Saturn, it's also a great mutation conjunction. That means that after 2 centuries of conjunctions in the Earth signs, so every conjunction for over 2 centuries, just over 2 centuries, happened in the Earth signs being Capricorn, Taurus, Virgo. And now, for the next couple of centuries, every conjunction, that means when they're together, like this in this chart, you can see Jupiter, Saturn together in the same degree. Every conjunction of Jupiter and Saturn will be in an air sign, so either Aquarius, Libra, or Gemini. So the transition period, actually, it's worth noting that the transition period into the air mutation, so now we're in the air mutation. I know this is complicated, but bear with me. We're now in the air mutation, which basically means what I've just said, that all the conjunctions for the next 200 years or so will be in the air signs. The transition period for that actually began in 1980. So it went into the air signs and then it went back into Earth, and now it's settled back into air again. And that 40-year transition period, if we think about how much things have changed, huge changes in technology, globalization, in the air that we breathe, and the things that are in the air, the wireless technology in the air, how we communicate and relate to each other has totally changed. I mean, at the beginning of when we had the Libra one 40 years ago, just over 40 years ago, the Libra conjunction of Jupiter and Saturn, mobile phones were, barely a new thing. Home computers, there was no internet. Look how much we've changed. And now we've got artificial intelligence, we've got sci-fi come to Earth. So I thought it was really interesting to just mention that, because it shows that we've got cycles within cycles, that Pluto in Aquarius is not acting on its own. I'll probably at some point do a video about the Jupiter and Saturn cycle and the air mutation, because it's really interesting. But it intensifies that Jupiter-Saturn cycle that we're in at the moment in the air signs. Everything we've talked about just now about the shadow of Aquarius, for example. And that puts that in the context of ideas coming to life. Ideas, Jupiterian ideas are limitless and expanding, whereas Saturn puts reality to it. So it's interesting to see what will actually happen with Pluto and Aquarius connected to the Jupiter and Saturn cycle. Will it mean that progress will be slower and more restricted than it might otherwise be because of that Jupiter-Saturn cycle? We shall only see. Thank you so much for listening to this video and watching this video. It gets personal after this, so I'm going to be looking at a series of short videos that show what Pluto in Aquarius mean for your Pluto generation. Don't worry if you don't know what Pluto generation you belong to. I shall be putting the dates, the years of all the Pluto generations into the videos that I make, but also into the descriptions as well, so you can easily see which video relates to you. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed this. I would love it if you could subscribe and share, etc. It's a new channel, so it'd be lovely to get a few views. Thank you so much. And bye for now.